This summer's not E3 continues, and much to no one's surprise, it ended up being a mixed bag. Following Sony's fantastically brief but stuffed state of play, we got a less than stellar Summer Game Fest show hosted by Jeff Keighley. It wasn't necessarily bad, it simply lacked heavy hitters, and that was a bad thing following that state of play. That wasn't to say it lacked anything worth talking about though. We saw the new and goateed Guile for Street Fighter VI, we saw more brutal gameplay for the Callisto Protocol, and we saw a shocking amount of additional space horror after that, with Fort Solis and the re-announcement of Routine, a decade-old game which genuinely shocked me enough to make me let out an audible, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." I'm excited though, to say the least. After that, we got Xbox's big show, featuring a lot of titles expected to release within the next year. Forza Motorsport's big return looks pretty great, Pentiment looks really interesting, and Starfield has my attention, though it still needs to prove itself in the role-playing aspect to set itself apart from current-day No Man's Sky. Sadly, it showed no Avowed, no Fable, and definitely no Perfect Dark, meaning none of those games are expected from now through summer 2023. Unfortunate, but not surprising. Then we had a Capcom show that was pleasantly crammed with cool stuff, particularly relating to Resident Evil. The RE4 remake got a tiny bit more info, including gameplay footage. Village got DLC in the form of Shadows of Rose, plus more playable characters for mercenaries, and an incredible looking third-person mode for the main story. And Resident Evil 7, 2 Remake, and 3 Remake got current-gen re-releases featuring enhanced graphics and performance. Overall, the big summer gaming showcases have had their ups and downs, once again proving that this is just how the industry is, regardless of E3's existence. But the latest broadcast, and the one I want to focus on for this video, is none other than Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII 25th Anniversary show. It was a short little spectacle clocking in at under 15 minutes, but man, it had a lot to give us, particularly in the latter half. The celebration kicked off with a pleasant surprise: Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade coming to Steam tomorrow, or today or yesterday, depending on when this video goes up, but the day after the stream happened. This is a pretty big announcement, because a lot of people still really don't want to use the Epic Games Store, so it seems like that little exclusivity deal finally expired and many more people can now enjoy the game, pouring one out for the Xbox-only owners. Immediately after, Yoshinori Kitase, producer of Remake and director of the original Final Fantasy VII, reveals himself to be our host for the show, and he also confirms that the Steam version of the game will be functional on the Steam Deck, meaning you'll be able to play it on the go. Pretty cool. And then, in true Square Enix fashion, he leads us right into a slideshow of new Final Fantasy VII merchandise, including a $200 Buster Sword digital clock. But the figures do look pretty nice, especially the Static Arts Cloud. From there, Kitase leads us straight into news about related mobile games. This segment kicks off with First Soldier's third season, featuring a new map, new weapon, new materia, and new style. I do not play First Soldier, so I won't pretend I know what I'm talking about, and I won't pretend that I really care about the news, but hey, if you do play it, then I hope this looks like cool new content. Following First Soldier, though, was the much more ambitious and interesting project between the two mobile titles, Ever Crisis, which is the game that seeks to basically remake every entry in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, making the entire canon accessible in one title. It's supposed to be episodic, and this new trailer shows off exclusively content from the original FF7 and Crisis Core, so it's safe to assume those games will be the launch chapters. It has a chibi art design that's much closer to the aesthetic of the original game, as well as static camera angles for environments. More combat was shown off, and it looks really flashy and pretty cool. We see the big ATP meter at the bottom that moves, allowing for stronger attacks and abilities as it fills. We also got a glimpse of costumes, which will likely be the main draw to the gacha mechanics. Cloud has a badass samurai-inspired design, Tifa has a blue blouse, and Aerith has a very regal-looking dress. And finally, there's a tease of young Sephiroth. I know a lot of people bemoan the fact that it's on phones only, but as long as it's fun and the microtransactions aren't intrusive to the point where I feel like I need to spend money to make progress, then I'm fine with it. Ever Crisis looks like a great way to offer a sort of primer on the FF7 canon without making people seek out the games individually. I am still extremely curious as to how they're going to turn Advent Children into a video game, but I imagine that'll be 2023 content. The trailer ends with the announcement of a closed beta later this year, which I will try to sign up for if I can. Next up was an even bigger announcement. Crisis Core Reunion, a very thorough remaster of the PSP game. And I'm pretty sure it is a remaster as opposed to a remake, because it seems like assets might have been ported over to Unreal Engine with new models placed on existing rigs. I only feel this way because cutscenes seem to have the exact same framing as the original, pretty much down to the pixel. I think it'd be way more painstaking to do that manually, but I could be wrong. Either way, the visuals are like night and day. The character models of all the major players, Zack, Angeal, Sephiroth, and Genesis, all seem to be of remake quality. The gameplay looks mostly untouched, but the new HUD design does feel much closer in line to the aesthetics of Remake. Reunion looks really promising, but if I had some concerns, they would be a couple specific ones. First, I hope the gameplay was changed enough so that the DMW system doesn't constantly interrupt the player's input. One of the most annoying things about the original game was how often it took control away from you to play out a slot machine animation and then a special attack animation afterward. If there was a way to curb that without sacrificing the DMW's core functions, then I think that would be a massive improvement. Second, I worry about the story. It sounds like the dialogue is the exact same, not in terms of voices, but in terms of delivery. Crisis Core has some boring characters with flaccid line reads, and it seems this remaster does nothing to change that. Can't say I look forward to it, especially regarding Genesis. A big thing of note, however, isn't something shown in the trailer, it's something shown on Twitter. The official hashtag for Reunion is CCFF7R, possibly hinting that this version of Crisis Core is the one that ends with Zack's survival. I predict that Crisis Core in Ever Crisis will follow the events of the original game, while Reunion is the one that will deviate. It would be a bold move among bold moves, so let's see how it plays out. And finally, the big thing everybody was hoping for but wasn't sure if it would happen. The announcement of Remake Part 2. One of the most common predictions after the release of Remake was that Square Enix was going to follow a specific naming convention where each part had a new subtitle with the RE prefix. A lot of people assumed Part 2 would be named Reunion, but that ended up going to Crisis Core. In reality, the subtitle is Rebirth, with a slight logo change featuring a red tinge on the word, and the lower part of the meteor, likely a hint at the escalating danger we'll be seeing in the story. But let's talk about the trailer itself. It begins with an overhead shot of Zack carrying a barely conscious Cloud to Midgar as a white feather gently falls beside them, with Aerith's voiceover talking about changing the future and not focusing on the past, with a short flash of meteor hitting the Earth. A caption reads, "What will become of the planet?" And then a surprise debut of gameplay, specifically Cloud walking through an outdoor area with the camera panning to Sephiroth walking beside him. It's pretty clear that this is the Nibelheim flashback we have in COM, and it was commonly predicted that this flashback would begin Part 2. Cloud's voiceover mentions Sephiroth's goal of taking over the planet, which he perceives as his birthright. It's worth noting the compass at the top of the screen, showing that the objective was a kilometer away, possibly suggesting the size of the areas we'll be walking in. I've been a firm believer that Part 2 won't be open world, and instead be more like a very wide hallway. You go in one direction, but there will be a lot of things to do as you progress that way. Another caption reads, "What is Sephiroth's endgame?" followed by another shot of the flashback, this time with Cloud and Sephiroth looking upon what appears to be the Shinra facility at Mount Nibel. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's definitely a shot that makes me feel like this game is truly taking advantage of both Unreal Engine 5, and the capabilities of the PS5. Meanwhile, Cloud continues to narrate his unreliable version of the events in Nibelheim, mentioning finding Tifa's body with Tifa herself interjecting. She assumes Cloud is implying that she died or could be some sort of imposter. This is clearly the moment where Tifa tries to look for discrepancies in Cloud's story, because she already knows that something's off about it. She's already aware that Cloud wasn't in these events the way he thinks he was. Another caption reads, "What is fact and what is fiction?" And we're back to the shot of Zack and Cloud with the white feather. Now we hear Cloud's voice seemingly speaking directly to Zack, asking him where he is. Then we hear Aerith say, "I'm trying so hard to find you," which could be dialogue during the Gold Saucer date, where she remarks on the similarities between him and Zack. She knows Cloud isn't who he pretends to be and wants to meet the real him. And then Zack's voice is heard apologizing to someone as he and Cloud finally approach Midgar. The trailer snaps to the title, which slowly reveals the subtitle, Rebirth. And the final surprise of the day is the fact that the game already has a release window, next winter, meaning late 2023 to early 2024, a cool 4 years since the release of Part 1. Furthermore, it'll only be on PS5. No PS4 version to be seen here, which is great. I wouldn't want the game to be held back by the design goal of functioning on a decade-old console. Then we cut back to Kitase, who reveals once and for all that the remake saga will be in 3 parts. I was one of those people who leaned towards 4 parts because I assumed that each installment was aiming for about 35 to 40 hours of content. But if this is going to be a trilogy, then I wonder how much there will be in the second and third parts. How long are they going to be? Are they still aiming for about 40 hours worth of playtime? Or is the introduction of the world at large going to bump it up to 50, 60 or more? Personally, I wouldn't mind it. And more importantly, where will Rebirth end? The Forgotten Capital, or will it go all the way to the Northern Crater? Lots of things to think about now that we know exactly how many parts the series will be. One thing's for sure though, Square is definitely going to try and get the final part out in 2027, which is Final Fantasy VII's 30th anniversary. I would bet any amount of money that they're at least hoping to make that deadline. I don't know if they'll accomplish it, but I bet Nomura, Kitase, and Nojima want to. I bet it's the goal the team is striving for internally. Man, the future of Final Fantasy truly looks bright. Within the span of summer 2023 to early 2024, we'll be getting Final Fantasy XVI, another expansion for 14, and 7 Rebirth. There's a lot to be excited about in the future. And even before then, we have regular 14 updates and Crisis Core Reunion and Ever Crisis to hold us over. I can't remember the last time I've been this happy to be a Final Fantasy fan. I don't know yet if I'll do it, but I am considering one more prediction video for Rebirth. I have done 2 of them already, with the most recent one being the spoiler discussion video for Intermission, but I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about the game until it's finally in my hands. And even when I'm done with it, I'm going to spend an additional few months thinking about it more, at least. This not E3 season has been pretty good overall. We got some absolute banger announcements over the last couple weeks. It started pretty strongly with State of Play, and then got a bit weak with Summer Game Fest, but went back up a bit with Xbox, and then got strong again with Capcom, and especially Final Fantasy. So, here's to the long wait we'll have to endure for the second part of this ambitious saga. This concludes my thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary celebration. I am back to obsessing over the game that got me to start my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.